what's going on? Today I wanted to talk about 3 mixing tips I use when it comes to mixing my music. I find that they really help me out when it comes to the workflow and getting things done quickly. Of course, my music is mainly house, but I'm pretty sure this can apply to any genre. And the track we'll be working on today is a part of a series I'm doing here where I took this song that I made with a crazy cheap setup in this video here, then slowly recorded everything into a DAW and arranged it into more of a full-fledged song versus a pattern that I did in this video here. And now we're here where we will mix and master it and get it ready for release. And today's video is also sponsored by Landr, but more on them later. Okay, so this track, I haven't done anything else to it, but I'm pretty sure that I'll probably make some small changes here and there as we work our way through mixing it. So so with that said, let's get to tip number 1, which is nothing under 100 hertz, but kick and bass. This has helped me out a ton. Basically, this track here, we have a ton of different elements going on, right? This would probably have to be one of my favorite tips. I mean, these 3 tips, I've stuck with them for so long now. And these aren't necessarily rules, they're more creative choices, but I use them all the time. So slowly we can kind of change up what we always use as kind of like our default template. So I don't say follow these exactly or else your music's gonna suck. All our music sucks and all our music is good. It just depends on who's listening, right? So all this green here is our drums. Here's a bonus tip, stay organized. I know that these are our drums because I recorded them in with green, but I also have some miscellaneous percussion stuff down here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and label this drums, but I think you can actually do groups in groups now. Oh my gosh, that is incredible. And let me go ahead and relabel these to what they need to be. That's the bonus tip, because you need to stay organized so you can easily and quickly go back and make changes when you need to without having to like, oh, where the heck did I put that one sound, or there's like this one crash, or where's my hi-hat channel? You know, it's a lot easier when you can just see it immediately, jump to it, make the change. That way it doesn't slow you down in the whole creative process. So now that we have everything labeled, you can kind of see that it's not a ton of elements, right? It's really drums, which of course is a lot of elements in itself, I guess. Sample, my lead line, bass line, and like this far little synthesizer thing. I'm gonna go ahead and move our bass line up a bit because what I want you to focus on with this tip is I don't want anything under 100 hertz that is not the kick or the bass, right? Because nothing else needs to be that low. And again, take all this with a grain of salt because I don't want to impose any kind of rules on you when it comes to making music. But a snare doesn't necessarily need to be that deep sounding. And I was kind of doing this a little bit with certain sounds. Like you can already see here, I have an EQ8 on here. And this is kind of my default setup is like around 120. I have a very slow sloping cutoff here because if we listen to my snare drum, if I add this, there's not really much that is down here, right? This is what it's cutting off. Oh, of course it stops. But that's just like muddy bass sound and noise. And the reason I say nothing under 100 is because that's kind of where I set my default EQ8. Like let's say I have EQ8 here and I just say Command F, right, which will bring up my search window. And in here I just type in 8, hit down and enter. It automatically will bring this up. Track 1's already cut at 120 and it's a slow sloping curve. Another way I used to have it was like this, and you can also have this at 100. But again, there's no real hard set rules when it comes to this. These creative choices slowly change and mold over time. But I can just add this to all of my tracks that is not a kick or snare because a lot of these tracks will have these hidden bass frequencies that really start to muddy a mix. And then when you take this to the mastering lab or the mastering studio or the mastering session, that's when things really start to show up, and it's really hard to make things that want to live in that frequency range. It's really hard to make those shine because you're bringing those up along with all this other unnecessary garbage and noise and hum from all these other elements. So if you by default just go through your track and say, oh, this is a hi-hat, this is not bassy at all, cut it. Oh, this is a snare or a clap, cut it. Cut anything below 100 at least, and then start playing around. Because another thing I like to do is I'll go in and listen to, let's say, these hats right here. And look at that. See how high this is? If I turn this off, luckily there's nothing here, but I bet you in certain areas there probably is. But even here, I can just start going up. And also, I'll sometimes go as far up as I can. And it's about to end. We'll start bringing this down. That's cool to me. That sounds good. Sounds like a hi-hat, right? It doesn't really take away from the core sound of itself. And you don't necessarily need to solo everything as you do it. I like to listen to it a bit of both. Sometimes solo when I really want to fine tune something, but then also in the mix with everything else. But that's kind of one of the big main tips that I would love to share with you, because I found it so important when it comes to making my music sound a lot more open and a lot more airy and breathable. It doesn't sound so smashed up. So I'm going to go ahead and go through all of these and kind of, you can already see I got a bunch of this default EQ8 that I just add to these tracks because I already know I'm going to cut something in there, right? And I know you can EQ a bit using your eyes, but I always kind of go back to like, does it sound good? That's the most important part versus does it look good, right? Because we're listening to music with our ears, not our eyes. But this is, again, good to kind of get the rough idea, and it will most likely leave you in a better place than if you were to not do any EQing at all. Yo, so look at this hi-hat right here. This is another weird example of where this would be beneficial. So I don't know, something happened with the copy pasting of this hi-hat, but this is its EQ8, and look how much it's jumping around with lows and highs all at the same time, but it's the same sample, just copy and pasted. So again, thankfully, I went ahead and I can kind of shave a lot of this off. Right, I do like some of the thicker sound of it, so I'm gonna leave it maybe around in this range here. Yeah, that's cool. But apparently there's a bunch of weird bassy stuff going on in here that I can't hear, but I know that mastering will bring out all that nastiness with it, and sometimes you might not want that. Now when it comes to using this first tip towards a sample, it pretty much the same thing applies, because unless your sample is the bass line as well, or is the bass line, then yeah, you can let it live below 100 hertz. But in this case, it's kind of the mid-range sound, right? It's not necessarily the bass line at all, or the kick drum or anything like that. It's just this. So I'm gonna do the same thing, 8. And see, it doesn't really make a difference. Oh, I guess it makes a little bit of a difference. But if you have a good, strong supporting bass line, this will not be missed when someone's listening to your track on Spotify or in a club. But for this one, I'm gonna go ahead and set it to the sharper cut and bring it down a little more. So I can see right around 100 hertz is about my deepest note, right? Right there. All this, sure, you can keep it, but I don't want it because I know I'm gonna have other elements down there that I want to shine. So I'm gonna go ahead and push this up a little bit. 95. Yeah, that's cool to me. I'm down with that. Now let's move on to our lead line here. This has nothing on it. Go ahead, type in 8. And I remember this one was pretty high pass to begin with, and I didn't want it to be too bass heavy, so I'm gonna just go ahead and push this up a little. That's fine. And then this far synth, this was the one that I had a lot of fun in that previous video, where we arranged the song and kind of added a couple more elements to the song with this auto filter section. So hopefully auto filter being auto filter and the setting that we have it should band pass it properly, right? But let's not fully rely on that. You never know. Let me go ahead and solo it. And just to be safe, right? I mean, we can even do this. We'll do this at 100, just to be safe. It doesn't hurt, right? You never know what other weird lurky things might be happening down there, or like you saw with that little hi-hat thing I mentioned earlier. All right, so now that we've added a ton of breathing room for our kick and our bass line, right? The stuff that kind of envelops the listener to get weird with it, the stuff that we feel more than we do here, especially in a club, right? All the bassy elements. This brings us on to tip number 2, which is another super duper important one. Let me go over to our bass line, which is that there can only be one that lives under 50 hertz. And I don't know where I got this tip from. I think I just started doing it one day. I could be way wrong. If you've heard anyone else talk about this tip, please link it below and refresh my memory. But what I mean by there can only be one is that when we have a kick and a bass line, we need to make the decision. What is this track's purpose and what is this track's intent? Do I want the bass line to be what leads this song and make it feel a little more groovy and a little more scattered and soulful, or do I want it to be a bit more harsh and techno and rhythmic and focus in on the kick? After you answer that question, if it's the bass line is the one that can live under 50 hertz. And then the kick drum, just cut it at 50. I know it's going to be a bit brutal to feel some of that go away, but I promise you, in a club or on a loud system where there's bass, you will not miss the 20 to 50 hertz range that much, because it's still really loud and it still just punches you right in the gut. Of course, play with this and see where it is. So in this one, let's say that the bass line is going to be what I want to drive the song the most versus the kick, because the kick's kind of subtle, kind of low key, right? So let's go listen to our kick. It's just here, right? I'm gonna go ahead, loop this, and we are going to find our EQ8 again. It's like this, and we'll go down to 10. If I open this up big time, you can see right around 37, it has a lot of oomph. But if we push this up, let's just say to 50, sounds like a damn kick to me, right? Without it. Weirdly, I could just be me preaching my book here. I think the kick sounds cleaner without the lower hertz to this. It sounds like it has a bit more punch to it to me. I could be crazy. Please, if you disagree with me, let me know down below. And are my headphones on properly? Am I hearing this correct? I mean, yeah, it's definitely bassier without this cut, but that's okay because, like I said a second ago, I want our bass line to be what drives this. And if I go to our bass line now, I have a huge cut on it, or now I do. And you can see we're right in this range too. Right, some of the actual notes of this bass are down in this range here. You can see them kind of popping up. These are just like the resonant frequencies, the most important frequencies of the sound as it's playing. But I'm gonna let a lot of this live, and I'm just gonna set this to, we can do 30, and I'm gonna do a sharper cut. Here's another helpful tip. I learned this from my buddy Joe Bickle. He actually did my first ever vinyl release on this record label called Mallory's, like in 2014 or 2015. Joe, if you're watching, what's up, dude? Miss you, bro. Come back to LA already. But I used to do sound for warehouse parties here in LA with Joe and my buddy Corazon and Christian. We used to just kind of mob around in these vans at like 5, 6 in the morning, setting up speakers for these illegal parties. But in there, I learned a lot about sound and how it reflects and stuff. And one thing Joe taught me was, like, when we were setting up our crossover points and our EQ for the systems, we would never let the bass frequency go below like 28. And if we really wanted to drive the bass and make people think that it was getting louder, we would lower it to 25. But anything under that, it's kind of like unnecessary. Like, it doesn't add that much more. So in a lot of cases, I'll kind of leave this at 30, or if I really want a song to be super duper bassy, I'll let it go down to like 25, maybe even 24. But anything under that is just, to me, is kind of unnecessary information, and it doesn't really add to what your song is trying to be or what your song is trying to emphasize, right? It doesn't add or take away, I should say. So again, taking away a lot of the low end mud when it comes to mixing and mastering, there's a lot less garbage and noise that is going to be getting brought up. So making your track cleaner and cleaner and cleaner is kind of the purpose of mixing and mastering. So I'm happy with this. I think that this works, right? These sound great. The kick still sounds like a damn kick, and the bass line's still bumping. I'm happy with that. I can leave it at that. You can also go crazy and start really shaping out your EQs. Like if we went and just listened to this bass line here, one thing that I used to spend way too much time on was listening for treble frequencies. Maybe a better one to show this on would be the sample. So let's go to where the sample is more open, right? And in here, we'll open this up, we'll make a really sharp bell, turn our Q up, and then grab 3. Maybe make it a little less sharp. Again, I like a lot of these frequencies. I think this is more for vocals. I used to do this a lot when I would mix vocals, and you can kind of hear weird frequencies in a room or something like that, and you can use this to kind of cut them out. And if you are going to go through this and hear weird things like, let's say we don't like that whoa sound in there, right? You can just go ahead and kind of cut this out a bit and make it really sharp. I wouldn't do more than 3, because then you start taking away a lot of the sonic frequencies of that sound. But I like a lot of the frequencies in this track already, so I'm going to leave it at that and not take away too many of the frequencies. So on to tip number 3. Hilariously, I got this one from Heinbach, and I think he got it from someone else that I can't remember, and I do not for the life of me remember which video it was in, because it was such a passing quick thing that he spoke about. But I have a link to his entire channel down below. Go watch it. It's a ton of fun. He didn't call it this, but it's kind of what I've been calling it, and it's the 666 method. Because if we hit tab and we jump over to our mixing view, we get a view of everything, right? And we can look at our meters down here, down below, and this will allow us to kind of get a good bird's eye view of where all our levels are across our multiple tracks. So what the 666 method is basically says, I remember learning this in engineering school a long time ago. Please don't think I'm an engineer. It was like a SAE online music course. You get a certificate, you know, you can give your mom a high five, and then you just, good luck, basically. So I remember one thing I learned there was you always want to leave room for mastering, because if there's no headroom for mastering, it's hard for them to fix and change and manipulate your track and make it sound louder if it's already at max volume. So give at least 6 decibels of headroom. And that's kind of perfect, ties in perfectly with the 666 method, because I want all my elements, depending on what they are, to not be louder than 6 decibels. But what's really cool is that with the 666 method, man, I should have called it something way easier to say. The elements that are not as important go down by 6 decibels to -12. And then from there, let's go down to -18, 24, so on and so forth. And this is just such a fast, quick way for you to kind of get the ball rolling when it comes to mixing. So by default, I'm gonna go ahead and play this. I can already see that our kick drum's coming in way too much. And that's basically it, right? So our kick drum's just hitting a little way too hard. And when the tracks turn into this mode and you can't see the numbers, try to leave at least one track open so you can see where the volumes are. And I know, again, we're using our eyes to do some mixing, but this is just to kind of get us in the ballpark where we can then shape it and mold it a bit more later. So on our kick drum, you can already see it's hitting a little higher. Cool, I'm gonna drop it right about there. And what else do I want to hit around 6 decibels? Maybe our bass, right? Because our bass is another big driving factor of this. You don't want every element. Every element's not that important, trust me. So since our bass line isn't anywhere near 6, I'm gonna add utility. All right, so now that we got this going on, let me grab the utility, and I'm gonna just use our gain to turn it up. Right, a little too loud, so I'm gonna let this be at -12. Cool, that works for me. Let's go and listen to our sample. Our sample's pretty low here, around the -18 range. Again, I'm just looking at these here. Here, I'll go ahead and open this up so you can see it. Pretty important element, I'd say. I'm gonna move this up to -12 as well. And I'm not gonna be using our gain sliders. I like using the gain sliders to move down, but not ever up past 0. So same thing, utility, grab utility and just push this up a bit. Okay, so a couple things here. This one's actually pretty interesting. This is, I guess, another tip on compressors. Compressors will catch peaks and kind of level out sounds. You can see some of the sounds on this sample are a little loud. That part goes above 12. Everything else kind of sits around -18. So what do? How do we fix this, right? I'm gonna go ahead and add a compressor. And this is just a super rough kind of compression, right? I'm not doing anything too crazy when it comes to sculpting this. Let's just do a ratio of 10, pretty quick attack, and a slow release. Okay, so it's still pushing past that point of -12. And basically I'm just trying to catch those peaks and bring them down a little bit. But this will allow me to push the sound as a whole up without having to worry too much about it. Because if we were to bring this all the way down, you can see that our volume no longer goes past -24, right? No matter what peaks are happening. But this is where you kind of use this to shape it up a little bit. Right, again, it's still hitting past that 12, and I'm not gonna like stress this for the rest of my life, right? It doesn't really matter that much. But this again just kind of gives me a bit more control. And from here, then I can just take our output and move this up a little bit, and this will kind of act as our utility ×2, right? On the back end of our compressor. You gotta start worrying about gain staging, but we're not gonna get into that this video. Yeah, that's cool to me. Let's see how it sounds in the mix. Yeah, cool, that sounds great, right? Awesome. So we got that done, Let's go and listen to our little synth line here. Where's that, the lead synth? I'm gonna make a really short loop. This is our lead synth here, the lead line. It's not that important. Maybe -18 would be good for it. So same thing, utility. Go ahead and crank this up a bit. That's okay. I think where these frequencies sit are in the higher frequency range. I mean, I don't think that, they clearly do. So they cut through the mix a lot more. Their perceived loudness to me is louder. So I'm gonna set it to about -24. Let's see. Yeah, again, just ballpark stuff, right? That sounds good to me. And now let's go and listen to this little sculpt lead line here. That's this, the super duper far away synth, right? Maybe we'll bring this one up to 36. So we already have a utility on here, and I honestly have no idea why, but whatever, let's bring it up. Cool, -36. Again, this is so bandpassed and way up in the higher frequencies that it sounds louder than it actually is. So let's see what this sounds like. Yep, I'm down with that. That's cool. Now we got to go back and focus in on our drums heavily. So this can work one of two ways. You can go and solo just your drums by themselves and make sure your drum track sounds good by itself, and then you can take that and listen to it with everything and then make some adjustments from there, or you can just kind of do it as you go. But one important thing that has also helped me tremendously is when I'm making a song, after a while you kind of forget that certain elements are there and that they exist, and you don't realize how loud they might actually be. So you have to make a conscious effort to go in and listen to, I'm just listening to the kick, or make a conscious effort that I'm just going to listen to this up hat and see where it actually sits and how it sounds. So it takes a second. Takes a little bit of time, but you know, you get used to it. It goes by faster and faster the more you do it. And honestly, the more and more you do it, the more you get used to it, the more rewarding it becomes and the better your music starts to sound. So it starts to become very worth it. So I'm listening to this little up hat here, right? Not that important of an element. I'm gonna let it sit at -18. Our snare, I want that to hit pretty good. So I wanna be -12 with our snare because I think that that's a pretty important element. So utility, we're gonna bump that up. Cool. This little patterned hi-hat, it's kind of a supporting to this. So right where it's at right now, -24, I think that's fine. Then we have this little percussion accent at -18. I actually want that to be even further back. I don't want that to be too up front, so we'll just do -6. Yeah, that's cool. We'll do -5 actually. Awesome. Percussion, miscellaneous percussion. We have a little crash going on in here. Right, let's see. Really quiet down at -36. I'm fine with that. A lot of this I kind of did some light mixing, you can already tell here, as I was making the track, which is totally fine to do. You don't need to do one or the other, right? It's all malleable. So now I'm gonna listen to this little loop here where we have this up hat energy, which is just adding to the energy of our up hat. So if we listen to this and this part, it currently replaces that part, right? But it's supposed to be a supporting part to this up hat. So if we go listen to those two parts, this is at -18 and this is at -18 to 24-ish, but let's bring it down to -24. Let's see what that does. That's okay. I actually kind of want it to be a little more high energy, so we'll bump it up to -18. Then we have another energy accented hi-hat to bring more energy into this. This is more of the supporting role, so I want this to be at -24. Let's hear it with everything. Let's mute this part out. Mute this part out. And then bring that part back in. Yeah, that does exactly what I want it to do, right? It just emphasizes and adds a little bit to what that hi-hat is supposed to do, which is add energy, but then it doesn't really change the sonic frequencies too much. It just kind of adds some more width to it. And speaking of width, you got to do some panning, right? So for this here, I'm just going to kind of do some random-ish panning. For the most part, it's not too methodical, but I just want to give space to everything. I always try and think of like, I have a cool collection of rocks and they're all in a line and I can't appreciate all of them. So I need to kind of give them some space so I can be like, oh my God, I have a bunch of cool rocks, right? So with that, I'm gonna kind of do this with panning. Of course, it doesn't need to be that extreme where things are over there. We're not the Beatles here, but you can try to be. You might not be, but I believe in you. So our perk accent, that could be cool pretty far left. All right, we'll bump that. What's this thing? Oh yeah, that can be center because that's such a quiet, simple little element. And then same with this up hat. I like that dead center. Our snare center, that's fine. Actually, I'll move our snare off to the right a little bit. Let's get kind of weird with it, right? Baseline, dead center, that's fine. Crash, cool. These, I want these to be even further apart. So we'll do -12 and +22. Just pushing our elements around a little bit in the sonic spectrum here. And then for our synthesizers, same thing. You can either do some, what is the thing called? The starts with an H, delay thing, right? So like, watch, this is actually really cool. So let's take this little synth lead line. We'll do a delay. And what we want to do is, instead of us duplicating this track and panning one hard left and another one hard right to create a wide stereo field, you can just use a delay, uncouple them, unsync them so that they're just based on time. Have one be 1 millisecond and then the other one be about, I don't know, let's just do 7. Turn our feedback all the way down. Do whatever you want. You can turn your feedback all the way up. And then our dry wet all the way up. So this is without it. Oh, let me play a part that actually you can hear. So this is dead center. And this has some width to it. Heard? Held? I forget what kind of delay this, Haas, H-A-A-S, Haas delay. That's what this is. And you can hear it. It's going all crazy, right? So this, the more of a delay you have, you've basically just created two tracks and slowly pulled them off of each other to create a really wide stereo feel. So you can get weird with this type of Haas delay to give your track some more width. This little quiet synth, I'm gonna leave that here. And yeah, now I'm just gonna kind of listen to some of the different elements and make sure everything kind of feels right? So far it's feeling pretty good. That part's coming in, real cool. That synth is actually a little loud to me, that synth lead line. I'll lower that. Yeah, -3, I like that. And see if anything sticks out to you, right? Yeah, this is cool. I'm down with this. And as far as it comes to the master channel, you can do a couple things on here if you want to get a better mix. I've heard people use utility to basically put their track in full mono mode, right? If you just hit mono, this helps you mix everything, but everything was kind of mono already. This does help with some stereo elements that you've recorded in, because just because something isn't panned doesn't mean that it's not going left and right, because if you had your pan set on your synth or something, then it could be going all out of whack. So this kind of helps you get a better understanding, but turn that off before you send it off to mastering. And another thing people do is bass mono. So anything that is bass should pretty much be dead center, because in a club, you don't want your bass being all the way panned to the right and the speakers don't even work. It's happened to me before. So don't do anything too crazy weird with the bass if you want that to always shine. It's kind of in a way a safety net. But I'm actually not going to be doing anything on the master of this track because I like the way it is. I'm happy with it. And yeah, with that said, let's get to mastering. And this is where things get super duper easy. The reason I say that is because I'm going to be using Landr to do my mastering. I've actually used Landr in the past a few times before, since I found their mastering to be one of my favorites. So when they reached out and asked to be a video sponsor, I felt that it would be a perfect fit. So I'm going to go ahead. You can do this on the website, but I also have the desktop app here, and that's what I'm going to be using here. And honestly, the reason I use Landr is because, one, I'm not a mastering engineer and I have no clue where to even begin when it comes to mastering besides applying a limiter and hitting it a little bit with a bit of gain, and that's about it. And then number two, mastering can be very expensive. I can justify the cost if I'm a huge musician and music is like my main thing, but I have long accepted the fact that I am not Bruno Mars, nor am I going to be headlining EDC anytime soon. But I do want my music that I make now to sound good or sound the best that it can within reason. So something like Landr, I feel kind of strikes the balance perfectly for me. The mastering side of things, right, this whole section is just $10 a month. Of course, you can go and do some of the one-time studio packs where you buy 5 masters, 1 master, MP3, or Wave. Or the other thing too, if you want to preview mastering on one of your tracks, use that link down below, and you can also get 30% off. So it's even cheaper than these prices here. And you could even go with the all access to do a bunch of things where you get mastering, distribution, samples, and a bunch of other stuff. But I just need masters, 5 masters a month with the regular mastering set, you know, kind of light a little bit of a fire under your butt to make some more music. Or if you don't use all the masters, they do roll over, so you'll be good to release that 40 song album in 8 months time. All right, so let's get to mastering. Oh look, here's one of the other tracks that I mastered a long time ago called Get Up. What does this sound like now? I haven't heard this song in a long time. Ooh, damn. All right, this is not what we're here for. Oh, I haven't even bounced out my track. My bad, 1 second. All right, when it comes to rendering out your track, I'm just gonna leave it to master. File type, I'm gonna set it to wave. Bit depth 16, that's fine. Sample rate 44.1, I was doing it at 48. Whatever, it doesn't really matter to me. I know some people are super hi-fi about this, and Daddy Kev actually had a really good argument saying how tapes and stuff are really hard to listen to today because they were made on a format that was so archaic to what we have today. So what if 44.1 or 48 become archaic in the future time, but I think we have such good technology now that we can just up-res it, for the lack of a better term. And yeah, dithering options, export, nothing crazy. YouTube, all you need. Let's just call it all you need. Let's give it simple. Boom, it's gonna export this. All right, back on the Landr side, we're gonna select new. You can master a track instantly, master an entire album. You can go through your folders, but I just wanna upload a single track, and that's gonna be this one here, the all you need track. And one thing that's awesome about Landr's mastering is that it actually uses really good AI to listen to your track, listen to the sonic frequencies, listen to the depths and volumes and dynamic range of your track, and apply specific mastering to your track. It's not a preset at all. You do have some tweaking later on, which is really good, like adding warmth or adding some more loudness to things, but it's not just a flat preset, because I used to use a default mastering chain and it worked, but there were some tracks where it didn't work. And with those tracks, I don't think I ever really released them because I didn't know how to master them. And they just sounded, I would just make them sound worse and worse. All right, so this is done. Look, all you need. Let's go ahead and hit this little right here to master it. And this is where things get really good. You can go ahead and see the progress. Oh, this is kind of cool. It's just listening to my track as a whole right now. Yeah, you can read all this on your own. Oh, look at that, building a custom chain. Nice, that's why I didn't waste my time over here building my own chain. We'll let Landr do it for me. Boom, preview complete. Let's do it. Listen, no. Don't give me anybody notifications. All right, so one of my favorite things as well on Landr is you actually have a volume match, so you're not just fooled by things becoming louder. We'll go ahead and turn that on by default because we want to hear this in the best possible ability. Like I said, you got a couple different options here. Style, warm, balanced, open. I want my track to be warm. Loudness, low, medium, high. We'll leave it at the medium. Another actual really cool tip about this is you can upload a reference track, so a track that's already been mastered that you absolutely love, and say you're using it like in this video here, right, where I trace a song because I want my song to sound sort of similar arrangement style. You can then take this a step further, add a track like that to the uploaded master reference track, and Landr will mix your track, take the elements that you have, compare it to the elements in their song, and make your track have the same vibe and feel as their song. It's not going to make your song sound like theirs, but it's going to give it the same kind of drive and emphasis and just characteristics, right? But that's not what we want to do right now. We're just going to listen to our Landr style. So here's the original. And then with master. Ooh, the bass. So this falls a lot flatter. So one thing I love about mastering, I still don't know how they do this. I think it might be multi-band dynamics, but basses, they go boom, and then they just have this beautiful round bottom that follows their initial sound. And that's what this mastering does, because without it, it's there, but say we want this to be more open. Right, less bass, more crispy high ends, or balanced. I like the warm. Loudness medium is good. I'm going to turn volume match off. So that makes it way louder, right? Why is that making it way louder? That's because we mixed with a ton of headroom. If we go back to our original track here, and we look at our master, we're not even close to zero. So all Landr, or not all that Landr is doing, but what that volume match is doing is mastering our track, which brings it up to level, but then matching it to where we currently have this. So yeah, volume match off is what your track will actually sound like, which is matching the same volume as majority of music that gets released today. So now we're done with that. We like these settings, hit create master. We get to choose our format, HD wave or MP3. I get unlimited, one of these 24-bit file recommended. Wow, get better results. Okay, did not know that. So remember earlier when I was talking about how if we go to export this part didn't really matter too much. I was mainly talking about the sample rate, but I guess you get better results if you export in 24-bit, which is good to know because that, I guess, gives it more room to play with. So if you have the option to do that, do that. But it's cool to see that it'll work with 16-bit anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and choose HC Wave, and bam, that's it. You got mastering done. And like I said, if you were to go and get the full-blown all access plan, you got distribution, so you can release a ton of music onto all streaming platforms and whatnot right from the Landr site, manage all your master tracks and stuff like that, and kind of see where things are going. Because again, like, I can go back and listen to some of my old tracks here, like this one that I did ages ago. I don't even know when I did this, but listen to the original. And then with the master, it just glues everything together. But yeah, like I mentioned before, shout out to Landr for sponsoring this video. Look at it, there it is, TriMaster Revisions. Oh cool, what is that? Drill down into the nitty gritty? Whoa, I did not know they added this. Huh, that's cool. Adjust the EQ, the lows are boomy, thin. Wow, okay, they actually got way better than last time. That's cool. Oh, well, did not know that. But like I mentioned before, if you want to preview this mastering technique on one of your tracks before signing up, which is actually really important, use the link down below. You don't have to sign up, you can preview it, but that link also will get you 30% off of their pricing on their site. And you can also use this promo code too if you would like instead. I get a little kickback, so appreciate you for using the links. And thank you, Landr, for sponsoring this video and allowing me to continue doing what I love to do. And to you, my friend, I appreciate you a lot. And I hope to see you again next week. And if you want to hear this full track, by the way, check the link down below. Got it on my SoundCloud as well as my Bandcamp. And yeah, hope to see you again next week. I'll chat with you then. And until then, you already know the drill. Share the love, share the knowledge. Knowledge is power. Peace. Where are we at with this? A lot of hits on this one. Not bad.